Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on episode number 13 of the video podcast. My name is Rick Seedy. I'm the co-founder and CEO of FareCompare.com, and we're going to chat a little bit in this video podcast about clearly some news topics. So certainly the number one topic, on everybody's mind is what's been happening in Paris and the aftermath of the terrorist attacks and some of the other issues that have occurred over there with Egyptian airliners and also some stuff in Lebanon. So we're going to chat a little bit about that and how it affects U.S. flyers and what could be happening over the next few months. We're also going to talk about the craziness of airfares and the yo-yo factor, how prices jump up and down depending on what days and when you shop. We're also going to chat a little bit about the busiest airports in the world. And we're also going to do my favorite part of the video podcast, was take a couple of different questions, which actually I haven't seen. So I'll be getting them sort of off the cuff, and you'll see what I get with those as well. So with that, I'd like to introduce the giggling person on the other end of the line from California, our editor from the site at FareCompare.com, Ann McDermott. Hey, Ann.
Hey, Rick. I was just thinking, I have a question for you too, and I'm going to sneak it in after some of the viewers' questions. But
you'd be surprised. This morning I got at least 2 questions when it's supposed to be for the public. It was for the announcer or the radio talent's next trip. So
perfect.
It's not surprising. We'll do that as well.
Well, a far more serious note.
Yes.
We got to talk about what happened in Paris, but mostly, as it's going to affect travelers. Now, I have a friend who's over in Europe right now, and she is reasonably, a little antsy, but she says, I'm having a great time, I am not scared, and I have seen some longer lines at security type things, but other than that, it's she's having I hate to say a good time in this context, but yeah, this was a trip that she had planned, and it's going well.
Yeah, and I think we should break this up into two things. Those people that are flying basically through the end of November, and what potentially could happen during the busier season, which really doesn't kick in for departures until really mid to late March, right? So this is the slowest time of year for tourism into Europe from the United States. And it's pretty simple. The weather's cold, and you have Thanksgiving and the Christmas holiday season, where people are flying to home. They're flying to visit their families and doing more stuff locally than they would be doing internationally. So, with that being said, the airlines are waiving the change fees for those people that are flying really pretty much. It's a little bit, dates are different, but up until the end of November for cities in France. That doesn't mean anything else in Europe, just for that. And just waiving the fee, which is $400, that doesn't help you if you decide to retake your trip, for instance, next summer. The difference in price still counts with that as well. So when they're just waiving the change fee if you want to change your particular flight. So that's sort of what's happening right now. Now, clearly, Anne, if you're in at any of the top 3 destinations, right, London, Paris, and Rome, it's not a great experience right now when you're at the Eiffel Tower, or you're at the ruins in Rome, or you're at some of the iconic places in London, and you have soldiers with automatic weapons walking around, right? Yeah. So that being said, what I would do in this case, if I had to sort of reevaluate, I'd try to find some sort of out-of-the-way places to go to that didn't have that. I mean, you could certainly still go to the tourist attractions. I know if this is your once-in-a-lifetime trip to get your photo at the Eiffel Tower, maybe that's what you end up having to do. But there's lots of places you can go that aren't at the common attractions, which are really fun to do, and we've talked about a lot of those as well over time. I'm a bit of an expert. I think last count on my 5 passports now, I had somewhere close to 40 trips to Europe.
That's an expert.
Yeah, so I'm in pretty good shape there.
I just wanted to say this, that I was looking at the U.S. State Department travel website, which is travel.state.gov.
By the way, great resource.
And there is nothing on there that says do not go. However, there's a statement on there from the U.S. Embassy in Paris, And it pretty much, says the kind of thing that you expect it would say. It says, we strongly urge U.S. citizens to maintain a high level of vigilance, be
Sure.
aware of local events, and take the appropriate steps to bolster their personal security. All common sense things that you should
be doing that
anyway.
anytime, regardless
Yeah.
of what happened in Paris. And, I mean, look, I've done several radio shows on this topic, and I remember down to the second exactly when 9/11 occurred, and I'm positive the French folks are going to be remembering this exact moment as well, right? So, I mean, the first thing is your heart goes out to all the families. It's absolute craziness there.
Yeah.
And, as far as that first phase, which is, hey, what's happening in the next couple of weeks? Now then the question is, what's going to happen for people is demand going to be depressed for going to Europe, right? Is this localized to Paris, one of the most iconic, and, I saw a figure, I think that it's 7% of their GDP is tourism to France, right? Which is a huge number.
So beautiful.
Yeah, and so, is it going to depress? And here's what happens. Airline reservation systems automatically start to drop prices if they sense demand is below some historic norm, right? And so if we start to see prices drop, and by the way, with oil prices dropping as part of this, they're right at $40 a barrel. I would expect some prices to drop on fuel surcharges as well. So I don't know if, so if demand starts to drop, prices will drop because they're trying to spur demand, and you might actually end up with some cheaper airfare into, into all sorts of European destinations. The one thing that I can sort of compare it to is several years ago we had some security concerns at the beach destinations in Mexico. I don't know, that was what, 4 or 5 years ago, and
Right.
It took almost 2 years, and the prices dropped precipitously. Airlines pulled capacity, so they pulled flights away from Mexico beach destinations. It took almost 2 years for that to recover.
Well, and this is a situation where we just don't know. We do know that the people of France are very strong and determined, and it is a beautiful country. And
Yeah, absolutely.
it is. I don't think this is going to knock them for any kind of a loop for any length of time.
Yeah, I hope so too, and I think that to some degree maybe there'll be some solidarity, and people will actually say, I'm going to fly there in solidarity. So,
Yeah.
Look, I think it's going to be interesting to see. We'll be monitoring what's happening over the next month and a half or two as we follow prices. Really, literally, billions of itineraries each day we're looking at. We'll be looking at those and using our several hundred computers to analyze that data. And we'll provide more information as time goes. But I agree with you. I mean, you have to be vigilant no matter where you're flying, right? So it's just one of those things that we'll continue to monitor. And so dropping off that particular topic today, let's talk a little bit about yo-yo airfares, right? So, we've seen a lot of, look, I'm looking at, our systems are looking at billions of prices each day. We see prices jump all over the place. I know it's frustrating for people, but let me give you something simple. In theory, you could get a different price every time you do a query on an airline, right? So not only do prices change, they have basically a price chart that changes, potentially in the case of domestic 4 times a day, and internationally, in theory, it could happen every hour on the hour, as well as their inventory systems. As soon as somebody does a booking, actually could change the whole way they decide what price the current price is. So you may be looking at a price, somebody else does a booking for a similar route, and you do a query again, and now the price has changed, right? So it's really important that, and it could be completely different based on the day you leave, your length of stay. That's what we started FareCompare for, is to sort of answer those questions.
And I think nowhere are you going to find greater discrepancies in flights if you choose to fly the first week in January, because you're overlapping a couple of big, crazy periods, a holiday and the January deal zone.
Yeah, no, it's the last 3 weeks approximately. It depends on, and this year it's on a Friday where New Year's actually falls. So it sort of ends on that Monday, the Monday after New Year's. So you get that deal zone a little bit earlier than you normally would. But yeah, the bottom line is that these prices are jumping all over the place. You need to feel good about your purchase, right? So you need to know what a good price is. We're going to help you with that. And certainly we have alerts, so they'll tell you when prices drop. We're going to give you advice about that. We're going to give good advice about when to buy. We got Cyber Monday coming up. It's pretty. I would expect that the airlines, well, in typical fashion, they file their sales late Monday evening. I got a feeling for this one special day, they may file them Sunday evening.
Well, I'll tell you, they are already telling us that these Cyber Monday sales are coming, so they're giving us a heads up that to look for them. So
absolutely. Now, why wouldn't they? There are going to be a lot of people shopping online, so there's going to be some deals to be had there. So we will be prepped up and ready for that as we see the fares changing on Sunday evening, and to the extent that they provide promotion codes and whatnot, if that's how they decide to do it. Very rarely do airlines use promotion codes like you would see, for example, on Cyber Monday, for example. But we'll see if they do that, and we'll continue to monitor that. So the other thing that kind of crossed our desk was a report that came out of Orbitz about the busiest airports, right? I actually got several questions on this particular report as I was doing radio shows across the country this morning. And, there is a top 10 list of the busiest airports and then, of course, the least busiest airports. So, topping the list was actually sort of surprising to me, actually.
I thought so, too.
Because I would have expected it to... to be Atlanta, which is one of the biggest airports in the world, but they had it at number 10, so I'm kind of trying to figure out where they got their data.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead. What's number one?
Yeah, number one, it says, is Los Angeles, closely followed by Chicago, and I was actually surprised that they have San Francisco third. Maybe they're using a calculation for busiest, which means... based on the size and square footage of the airport or something.
Angriest people, maybe?
I'm not sure exactly. So, so Dallas was number 9, which I think is the 4th biggest airport in the world, or 4th or 5th. So I'm not sure exactly how they got their particular data, but hey, it's something to talk about because all these airports are going to be super busy, right? And that means you need to be there a little bit early. And by the way, the least busiest airports, we might mention that too, was one of my favorite airports codes, by the way, which is OGG, O-G-G, which is Maui, and also Omaha's Epley Field. I guess nobody wants to go see Berkshire Hathaway's president over there.
You could get some very fine steaks there too,
Exactly. In fact, I'm positive I'll get at least a frozen carton of those here for the holiday season. And then it also included San Jose, which is right to the south of both the Oakland and the
I was
San
kind of
Francisco
surprised
airports.
about that too, because that's getting a lot more attention, a lot more deals and stuff. So
it's interesting too that Orlando, which is not a hub airport, was in the list on the top 10 at number 7. So I thought that was interesting too. So anyway, as we always do here, we'll question some of the data sometimes, but at least it starts the conversation as far as that's concerned. So rounding out, that's basically the main topics from the podcast. Maybe it's time to take a couple questions. Actually, my favorite part. So want to fire away? Let's see. What do you have for me?
Okay, Barbara from Ohio has a question, and I know you've heard this one before, but a lot of people may not be familiar with this.
I hope I have. Yeah, I hope I can help.
Okay. She writes, a few months ago, I needed to change a return flight home from a Saturday to a Thursday. Delta wanted to charge me $1,000 to do so. Now, she doesn't say where she's flying, but it sounds like international to me. But anyway.
Yeah, Delta that would have been either a $200 change fee or a $400 change fee for international, plus the difference in the new flight.
Okay, so Delta wanted to charge her $1,000. What she did was I canceled my flight and booked the return on Southwest.
Yeah, it must have been domestic then, because they do fly some few flights to the Caribbean. Yeah.
Anyway,
you and I are going to have one day. We're going to have a podcast about how to pronounce Caribbean and Caribbean because it's potato and potato. So we're going to talk about it. Anyway. I digress. So keep cooking.
So she canceled her flight. She booked the return on Southwest, knowing that she would have a credit for the return flight on Delta that she could use at a later time. Okay, she goes on to say, I have tried to use the credit and they want to charge a change fee and even an online booking fee, even though I can't book it online.
Yeah, they're
I,
actually charging an offline booking fee, which is a phone call
oh,
fee.
okay, okay.
Yeah, I think.
And well, anyway, she basically ends up saying, "Is there a way to maximize my credit voucher and not pay these crappy fees?" Her words.
I believe she is not too happy with the fees. Okay,
No.
let's put this in context, right? So,
Okay.
first of all, in 2014, the number approximately $3.3 billion charged in change fees. Change fees alone. Now, the change fee is an interesting fee. You have four airlines that have 80% of traffic, so that would be domestically $200 and internationally $400, except for Southwest Airlines, who does not have a change fee. In her case, Delta has a change fee of $200. So when they wanted to charge her $1,000, they were charging her basically, $200 in that penalty or the change fee, plus another $800 in the difference in price of her new quote unquote ticket, right?
Yeah.
And that's not unusual. That happens because she wanted to change it at the last minute. She's being charged as though her boss is paying for her ticket, right? Which is inside of 7 days, and they're going to charge a hefty premium for that. Typically, what they call the walk-up price or the Y price. So that's very expensive. So she did exactly the right thing. She canceled. Well, first of all, you must cancel that, right? So if you don't make that last flight, they're going to cancel your whole thing, and you'll get no value whatsoever. So you must call, even if you decide not to go on in this case, on her return leg, right? And by the way, if you decide to cancel the first part of an itinerary, you need to call and cancel that, even if you bought it on another airline, so that they can actually give you the value back on your return tickets. Be very careful about that. Now, she booked it on Southwest. That makes sense, right? So now she ends up with whatever the residual value of her ticket was minus $200, right?
The Delta ticket.
For the Delta ticket. Let's say that Delta ticket was $400, the outbound was $200, the inbound was $200, then basically she has zero residual value, right? Because she already took the outbound half and she redid the inbound. That $200 basically wipes out her entire ticket. Now, if she had paid $600 and it was $300 and $300, she'd have $100 credit left, right? And that credit is really tied to the ticket number. Now, electronically, the ticket number is a long string of digits that you need to know. So here's the deal. You can't take that long string of digits and plug it into any online tool in order to use your credit. You have to actually make a phone call. And dearie me, Anne, guess what happens when you make a phone call on airlines?
I believe there's a fee.
You get charged a fee. Now, I think that you and I have had a discussion about change fees. I think it's the most onerous, crazy thing, because typically this happens. Not only did you have the penalty for the change fee, but an extra several $100s in many cases in the difference in the flight cost at the last minute. So, you and I have had this discussion. Bag fees are optional. This fee is overly onerous as far as I'm concerned. And look, Southwest doesn't charge a fee. That tells you something, right? That it can be done, right? They're making a ton of money off of this fee. So to maximize that fee, what she would have to do is make sure she can't call. You have to call and cancel. By the way, they don't charge you for that phone call. To cancel the last half of it, and so you have to call and cancel the last half of that itinerary, and then you need to remember that ticket number. And by the way, again, you're going to have another $25 on Delta, United, American, approximately for that phone call. So then you're basically the change fee plus $25 to actually use that credit.
It almost sounds like the moral of this story is on some airlines, on many airlines, I guess, if you have to cancel or somehow the change fee comes into play, you're kind of out of luck. Yeah,
almost nowadays, especially on domestic flights, if you're buying your ticket, outside of 30 days and it's under $450, basically if you have to change your ticket, your entire itinerary, you're going to lose half the value of that $400 ticket. if you have to just change a portion of it, you're basically going to lose the entire value of your ticket. It's sort of like buying a ticket to a concert and not going at this point, right? Because when you're buying non-refundable at a $200 change fee and your ticket's only $300 or $400, by the way, you're basically going to lose almost the entire value if you have to change. And not only that, you're going to have to figure out how to, when you do change it, what's the cheapest potential opportunity at the last minute. And typically the legacy airlines like Delta, United, and American are going to be extremely expensive because they believe you to be a business traveler who can afford much more.
Well, I know you usually like to say, okay, for next time, but what would one do? I mean, is it just that you have to be really, really sure about your dates? Or
look, it's a non-refundable ticket, right? So you better be pretty clear about your dates because you're going to lose the value of your ticket. And even worse, if you want to change something at the end, the market's going to charge you more for that. That's the whole problem with this, right? We see this problem all the time at the last minute. So then you have to sample. She did exactly the right thing, right? She sampled all the other airlines, saying that's crazy. I'm not paying $1,000, right? And then she found Southwest. Let's say Southwest was $250 one way or something like that, right? At the last minute, and so then at least you didn't have to pay the $1,000. But at that point, you're basically at the mercy of calling and seeing if you have even a small amount of residual value on your ticket. Now, if you're buying a ticket internationally that's over $1,000, $400, you're typically going to have some residual value. In fact, I've changed a few tickets, and I've got sitting on one of the pads on my desk here. I'm looking around that long ticket number, right? So that when I do it and call in, now here's the lucky thing: I have elite status on American Airlines. I don't get a fee when I do that because of elite status. So the other way to get around the call-in fee is to have elite status.
And I suppose if there's the possibility you might have to change dates, but there's really not a lot you can do about it. Is travel insurance ever?
Yeah, travel insurance, there are versions of it that let you fully change it, but they typically are 20 or 25%, not a very good deal.
Yeah.
Right, so, but typically travel insurance, that's got to read the fine print, by the way. It's sort of, you can't change it for convenience, right? It has to be an act of God or, some sort of thing that occurs, right? So you have to read, different travel insurance is different, but to basically say, look, I decided not to take my trip, there are versions of travel insurance for that, but they're very expensive.
Well, Barbara, I hope that was at least somewhat helpful. Unfortunately,
well, the good news is that Barbara did exactly the right thing, right? So, I mean, at this point, that's all you can do. A lot of people, by the way, and a lot of people forget to call and cancel that segment. And when they do, the airline cancels the entire segment and kills the entire value of that set of tickets. All right, so you definitely want to call to do that.
All right, here is Sarah from New York. Sarah says, I am planning a trip to Northern Europe in the wintertime. Right. I know all about the cold weather, she says, and I don't care. Good for you.
I've been to Norway, Denmark, Finland in the winter, and guess what? It's cold.
She says, my dates are flexible, and mostly my destinations are too. So how do I find a place to go at a good price? When is the best time to buy my ticket? How many months in advance? My ideal budget is $500, but I'm willing to go to $800. Do you think it's possible? And she says, thank you.
Yeah, I love people that end with thank you. Very, very, very nice. Look, couple different things. It doesn't say what city she's in. If she's in
New York. We'll say New York City.
She's in New York. $500 is a little bit out of whack, but we do have WOW and Norwegian Air Shuttle, which is potential, right?
Well, I don't think it's out of whack with those guys. I think she can do it.
I think 500 is potential there. I think wintertime certainly 500. 800 is more close to what you might pay. Look, in a couple different things. When you go to Europe, they have what's called weekend and midweek pricing. So if you leave on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're going to be charged anywhere from $20 to $40 each way more than if you leave on a Monday through Thursday, for example. And different ones are different. Sometimes Thursday is part of the weekend, sometimes it's not. But basically, if you leave on a Tuesday or Wednesday and come back on a Tuesday or Wednesday, you're going to have a cheaper ticket. The other thing is that advance purchase, you want to start looking at that ticket ideally 5 months in advance, but it's okay up to three 2.5 to 3 months in advance. You don't want to get inside of that if you can. Advanced purchase rules on international tickets aren't quite as onerous as they are for domestic. On the flip side of that, if you're staying for, let's say, a month, some of the cheapest fares also have what they call a max stay rule, that means the cheapest fare might say max stay, and typically some of them say 30 days. So if you stay 29 or 30 days, you're good at the cheaper price. If you stay 31, they're going to bump you up to the next higher price, right?
Is there still a Saturday night rule?
Yeah, and for a lot of the cheapest prices also have a Saturday night stay rule. Now, if you leave on a Sunday and come back on a Saturday, you are not staying a Saturday night, even though it seems like a week, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to be careful of that as well. Make sure it includes a Saturday night. You'll get the cheapest prices there. Now, that's just general pricing, right? Seasonal pricing. We're in wintertime rates. The average fuel surcharge to Europe at the moment is in the $440 round trip range. That's almost eating up her $500 budget. That's before they charge a price for the ticket, and that's for United, Delta, and American, right? Now, it's a lot, and those are typically the same as their partners: Lufthansa, KLM, Air France, British Airways, for example, right? But we do have, some new entrants into the low-cost arena for transatlantic travel, including WOW and the Norwegian Air Shuttle. And by the way, Norwegian Air Shuttle is on a Dreamliner. Now, the seats aren't configured like they are on the Dreamliners for the legacy airlines, so she actually could do that. And by the way, Norwegian Air Shuttle and Northern Europe. Now, she might mean actually London, the United Kingdom, which is the sort of the northwestern part, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to what I would call completely Northern Europe, which is, Denmark above Germany and, a little bit further east there and north. You get into Sweden and Norway and Finland, for example, as you go further north. And by the way, those have been cheap, and we've seen the prices to the Nordic countries actually drop.
Oh, yeah. Oslo, Stockholm, Copenhagen, and they just sound so pretty. So
yeah, and at the wintertime, actually, it's kind of cool. I actually used to work in the oil and gas business back in the 90s and spent some time in Stavanger, Norway. And you can go check out some really cool fjords during the wintertime as well.
I bet they're really cool during the wintertime.
Yeah, so it's a really neat place to visit. Just take a very warm coat.
I would just also add for Sarah to check out our deals blog. Whenever we're seeing particularly eye-popping type sales, and some of those that Rick mentioned on WOW and Norwegian Air have made it in our deals blog, and it's you may find exactly what you're looking for.
And you'd be surprised too. I think it was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I went with my wife and daughter. They had a really crazy business class sale to London over the holiday season. I think it was like $1,500 round trip or something.
Wow.
This is back when Continental used to do that. So we actually took a Southwest flight down to Houston, flew on Continental in business class. Can't remember if it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, but actually the weather wasn't terrible. There's sort of a microclimate there in London, so it wasn't actually, it was, in the 40-degree range, but it actually, we toured all over places. It was actually kind of cool. So it can be done, and you can do it at the price point you want. I'm absolutely sure of that, Sarah, so good luck.
Thank you, Rick. And I know you've got a couple of last-minute things to say.
Yeah, no, let's close out the podcast with a couple different things. All the things we talked about here are on our blog, so come catch us at the blog. You can certainly catch the video podcast and take a listen. Also, you can pull this stuff from iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, a variety of other platforms, so be sure. This is episode 13. We'll be having episode 14 next week. And again, I would stress you need to download our new app. A whole bunch of new content showed up today with some cool things. It's called Adventurist for FareCompare. Just type in FareCompare into either a Google Play or the App Store on iOS, or you can just go to farecompare.com/app and it'll automatically take you there from your browser. So check out this new app. Beautiful new photos. Actually, 1.2 is coming out in the next couple weeks on iOS with some cool new features. So we're really excited about that. So again, thanks everybody for listening to the podcast, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks.